recognize the leader of the official opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I'd like to say it's a pleasure to rise today and talk about this budget, but it actually isn't. I mean, I've seen unprecedented meaning to the phrases tax and spend. I think that even in the Liberal philosophy of many years gone by, this must be a record. When I look back at the election platform and what was put forward at the time by the Liberal Party, you know, they created some interesting numbers. And one of the numbers that, of course, was most interesting was this $150 million contingency fund built into the budget. Now, in that $150 million contingency fund, it was going to carry right along, and in fact, it would be still going now and going on into 2021, because it was such a crucial part of the foundation in order to ensure that we had the necessary room to play with. From the very beginning, this contingency fund was a gimmick like no other. It was a gimmick to inflate the budget and then a gimmick to take it out. But you know, I'm looking here from that original report on 17-18, and it doesn't say anything about the contingency fund being gone in the budget in 17-18. But yet we find it removed. In fact, in this classification here, it shows that it would have been at $354 million because the fund was there. So now why is it already gone? Because it now can be used to lower the deficit number. It now can be used to give the illusion that things are getting better. It now can be taken out because we've taxed $600 million of new dollars to the citizens of this province. Right. So they're paying through the nose to cover up the mistakes that this government is doing in terms of spending without regard to the future of this province. Right. The deficit, the debt. We look at the debt. What was projected here? $1.7 billion by the year 2021. We're at $2.4 billion now and counting. There would be 400 or 500 additional projects that have not even hit the books yet that will tack on to that 2.4. So probably $3 billion plus by the time this government is finished making announcements all over this province, and making announcements to do nothing more than buy votes. So if that's what it takes to stay in government, to continue to tax more, spend more, and buy a vote all over this province, then I would like to suggest that for once we take a different approach. For once, the citizens of this province say, you know what? I too want to be part of the solution to move forward in a different direction. And that's where we need to take a whole different focus. When I looked at when the government first came in and created the Strategic Review Program, what was the purpose for that? The purpose was purely to justify the HST. No other reason. It cost $860,000, and there wasn't an item other than, I think, the issue around naming bridges and buildings and charging for it that they learned in that process that we hadn't already done in program review and hadn't already been shared with the government. But no, we need time in order to justify the HST increase. An HST increase which we said we didn't need, we weren't going to put it in because we were getting better at managing your tax dollars. And all of that's a matter of record. All of that is a matter of fact, not fiction, not spin, not let's make it look differently than it actually is. We didn't have an audited statement that was challenged and qualified in the first budget. We didn't have a fund called a contingency fund that the Auditor General say goes against best practices in the industry. We didn't have any of that. So yet we keep throwing this out there and saying, oh, we're doing better. We're got a balanced approach. A balanced approach. We have taxed to almost $600 million of new taxes, and we have spent about $400 million of new spending. And we're calling that a balanced approach, spend and tax, when all the while the Minister of Strategic Review would stand up, or the Premier would stand up and say, oh, we have a balanced approach. We identified these savings. Well, when your costs are going up and your taxes are going up, where are the savings? Where are the savings that is so often touted as a balanced approach? So the fact is it's not balanced at all, nor was it ever intended to be balanced. It was intended to give me more money so I can spend it on your behalf. And we've seen firsthand that that isn't very productive in many ways. When we look at the current budget here, right on the cover page, it talks about cut the deficit in half and a growing economy. Now, cutting the deficit in half, of course, you take the contingency fund out because we don't want to talk about that anymore. It served its usefulness, and the media have forgotten about it or why it was even there, or don't even question how it was a manipulation of numbers in order to make things look good. But when the government arrived, the deficit was $377 million. It actually, in the third quarter of that year, went to less than $300 million. But by the end of the year, this government had inflated it to 388. We had to get it up there because it wouldn't fit the whole program, the strategic illusion that things were going to get better because we didn't have time to get all the taxes in place. So we need to buy time. The spending growth, which was down to 0.8%, is now at 4%. So we've turned the corner in the wrong direction. So says Richard Sayon, who's now written 2 books, to little avail because who is listening? We've seen it now from the different commentators. We're getting it now even recently from the National Post. The government is following a traditional program of tax and spend. There isn't any other model here. There isn't any other strategy here other than typical politics. I'll buy your vote in every part of the province, and I'll tax you to pay for it, and you will love me for it. Mr. Speaker, I like to think that we've gone beyond that now. I like to think that the people of this province have said enough politics, enough of traditional behavior. Our province deserves better. Our province must have better. When we look at the give on one hand and take away on the other, I mean, as my colleague said yesterday, and I know firsthand about the property tax, 16,000 businesses benefited from a property tax reduction. A property tax reduction that amounted to about $30 million a year across those businesses. And what was the first thing this government did? Do away with that. Oh, but we're going to give you a business tax reduction. A business tax reduction, an after-profit tax that pales in comparison to the savings they would have had on property tax. And we see in that sense that, you know, pales in comparison by a factor of about 5. Mr. Speaker, again, the whole smoke and mirrors. A situation where we're saying we want to help those who can't go to university because of funding, and we all agree with that. A system that actually netted the province $30 million, but hidden by a program to help students attend university. So, Mr. Speaker, why don't we just put it out there? And why don't we just be square with the people of the province and say, here's what we have, here's what we need to do, and I need your help to make it happen. Here's what I ask for your assistance. We don't seem to be able to focus in the area that allows us to work together. We saw this morning in a situation where we all came together for the right reasons on the Ellen's Law. And we saw great comments from both sides. My colleague here talked about this was a model for us to follow in this House, that it was something that we should cherish as an opportunity to agree on the bigger picture and to move forward. We have seen this government talk about putting more money in education. Yes, on the surface that looks great, but what are you going to get for those tax dollars that you have taxed every person in this every person in this province in order to get better results? Everywhere you look, you'll say, oh, I'm putting more money into it. Mr. Speaker, that has been done for years. At what point do you say, I'm putting more money into it, but I want this sort of outcome? I want these results to ensure that the money I'm putting into it actually gets the results we need. And Mr. Speaker, it is so sad that we pretend we're going to do better, but we don't. We don't do it differently. And I'm using the term we loosely because I'm talking about this government. I'm talking about this government not changing political behavior that has been a hallmark for generations. And we see it both federally and provincially. And yet, we just let it happen and we pretend it doesn't exist. The education system, 8th in the country, both on the Francophone and Anglophone side. Now, when are we going to take that seriously? When are we going to allow teachers to design the curriculum and make our education system work? A system that has proven not to work to its full effectiveness in the last 40 years. And no one believes that that's the issue with the teachers in the classroom. But there are a number of issues preventing them from being as good as they can be. And when do we step aside and allow them to help us build the education system that actually works and get the results for every student? When do we get that as a first and foremost opportunity? And what have we seen this week when you talk about the Minister of Finance made a comment today about she was so proud of the budget, an incredible budget, I think the words we used, or that she used. And I would say an incredible illusion would be the words that I would use. And that illusion has been perpetuated right from day one. Now, I got to say, I don't think I have, the government has certainly a great ability to deflect, to avoid, to misstate or state only part of the information, so it gives the illusion, the impression that there's something else that is happening. And we've seen that time and time again. And I would suggest that how do we get to the real facts? I mean, look at this week, Budget Week. How many bills have we had come forward this week on Budget Week and that have taken time in the debate? How many times has that happened in the past where we fill a week up? And I'm not taking away from any of the bills that have been brought forward, but what I'm suggesting is it all part of a bigger scheme in many of those bills, all part of a situation that we basically say, we'll just keep the media talking about something else other than the budget. And it's so amazing because it works. I mean, your communication strategists must be, congratulating each other because it generally works. We'll talk about changing ombudsman to ombud. We'll talk about things that just we want to talk about rather than talk about the budget. And we see it over and over again. We'll deflect the issue about the negotiations. The negotiations that I would say, from seeing what this government has put forward to date, we don't see any sign of negotiations. We see sign of capitulation. And most recently, in this what was so-called negotiation with First Nations. So we've said, oh, well, we've been tough here. We got them to sign off on Sis and Mine, and we've given them everything else because they're going to sign off on Sis and Mine. Well, what have we done for all the retailers, all the businesses that are working next door that have an unfair tax agreement, comparatively speaking? When do we recognize the pitfall and the strains that has with those businesses? Because they are not being treated fairly. Mr. Speaker, we can't keep avoiding the obvious issues that come up in our everyday dealings. We negotiated a deal that really didn't change a thing and claim victory. We negotiated a deal with Embry that basically perpetuated a bad deal that happened 20 years ago. And we extended it, this government extended it another 50 years. And you say, well, why would we do that? Why would this government spend time pretending that they're negotiating while at the same time having a deal that did not bear the fruit or the business that it planned? Signed up 13,000 customers and basically had a plan for 70,000. But yet, what do? We could perpetuate it. We carried on at the expense of the taxpayers of this province. So it's just like, do we negotiate? The Health Accord struck this great deal with the federal government, the first one to break ranks with our provincial counterparts, and break ranks in a way that we made it look like something that was a benefit. Now, I remember when that 6% and 3% plan for health transfers was first proposed, probably back in 13, in that range. And I remember the current Minister of Health, who I believe would have been the Leader of Opposition at that time, standing up and talking about, oh, this is terrible, we're losing millions of dollars every year, we're losing all this money, like I think it was like $10 billion over a period of 10 years, and basically saying this is awful. And what was done by this government? Signed the very same deal, first to drop ranks, and at the same time go and say, well, we're getting $250 million, but that's over a 10-year period. We'll take that. $750 million reduction. So $1 billion that they complained about before, $750 million they just gave up and said, we got a good deal with Ottawa. How many times do we see this situation of saying one thing and doing another? I've talked about it here in the legislation repeatedly, because the positions that were taken the last time many of the colleagues on the government side were in government are the exact opposite to where they are now. And nothing, of course, is any more relevant or prevalent than the issue around transferring of French immersion from grade 3 to grade 1. And last time they argued vehemently, took it to court to go from grade 1 to grade 3. You know, you have to say, do we have a long-term plan or do we have a 4-year plan? And do we have a situation where we basically are going to move the province forward, or are we going to continue to move the province around in circles? The jobs plan. What did we hear? And I was interviewed recently, and I was talking about the reality of the province and what opportunities we have that working together we can achieve that. The talents that we see in all sides of the House, but most importantly within the civil service, and how we can move forward. And they said, well, how would you sell that? I said, would you rather? I said, we'll create 5,000 new jobs the first year. We'll create another 5 the second year of the mandate. Because no one's going to ask what the details are behind it. Is that what you want me to say? Well, I won't say it. Because unless I got a plan to deliver on it, I won't say it. But we're quite happy to stand up, put a promotion out that 3,000 jobs according to Opportunities New Brunswick. We don't know when they're going to happen, 3 to 5 years, I think the CEO of ONB said. So it's not current jobs, it's not real jobs. And that pales in the comparison to the commitment. But the thing is, Mr. Speaker, the commitments are hollow from this government. The spin is great. And what have we heard so many times? I mean, I know that the Minister of Post-Secondary Education is getting all geared up here for his opportunity here in a few minutes. And I guess we know. We have to really be watching what he says.
Fact check.
Because I'm hoping that we're all prepared to do a fact check, because, you know, recently when that was done, I guess the truth came out, but it didn't come out from the minister. It came out from a fact check. Mr. Speaker, we deserve to be better to the public. We deserve to put all the facts on the table. I've said to the Premier, and I've said it a number of times, that, and I said it most recently that I recall, and I said I haven't found the actual time that I said this, but it was that I would debate the economic situation of this province with the Premier at any time. I would debate the facts. I would debate the facts that, well, when you arrived, where the deficit was and where it was trending, where the commitments were. You didn't inherit $1 billion worth of new commitments. But that's what we'll inherit when we take over the next government. When we form government in 2018, that's what we're going to have. We're going to have all these commitments that this government is making and just shoving it down the road on whoever shows up next. Now, is that planning for the future, or is that avoiding the future, Mr. Speaker? I would say it's avoiding the future big time and putting it on the backs of whoever comes along next. But rest assured, we're not worried about the time that we're spending there, and we, meaning this government, because we're only concerned about how long we can look after ourselves in the position of government and what we can do to stay there. I've been extremely disappointed that we can't make fact-based decisions. I mean, the Premier had said many times that he wanted his decisions based on fact. So I'm trying to figure out, well, okay, what decisions are based on fact? We've proven over history that if we just tax more and spend more, we create an artificial economy that looks good through the election process, goes, oh, shovels are in the ground, roads are being paved, and people are saying we're all's good. But another 3-4 years, gone. But what have you got left? You got left with an infrastructure you're trying to pay for. How do you do that? Oh, we'll tax more. People are leaving the province. The population, which was 1 week, was promoted as we're doing great, it's up 1,000. Then the reality check the next week, now it's down. So, Mr. Speaker, we can't pretend that all is well. We can't keep talking about, we're doing better when the facts don't show that. We have to decide what we ourselves can do to demonstrate a more responsible behavior. And that's what concerns me the most, is that adults, we can't sit here and say, I want to, based on the facts, make decisions that matter. And when I was talking about the Premier and sitting down and talking about the economy, you know, let's talk about the facts. Let's talk about the facts that when this government arrived, there wasn't 900 million, 900 million of commitments that they had to deal with. There wasn't a growing debt. It was dropping. Deficit was dropping. The debt was leveling off. We still were working because we were still in a deficit, but the numbers are all trending down. Population, the whole issue around employees and the civil service, and we were looking at managing that, right-sizing because of through attrition. That was all moving forward. The hospital boards, Vitality and Horizon, were working very well together, meeting and exceeding, you know, not only working at service levels, but cost structures and efficiencies in the system. But what happened? Get rid of those folks. We certainly, and then the CEO of Vitality, first to go. Just can't have him around anymore, even though the board said we want to keep him. We got in the same situation now, recently, with the hospital workers, where Vitality are talking about, we're doing fine. We don't need to replace our employees with an outside company. Mr. Speaker, we have opportunities here in this province. We have opportunities that basically we need to work together to achieve them. So would we say that, can we improve operations in hospitals? Can we improve cleanliness? Can we improve food? I don't think anyone would say, yeah, I want to be part of that and I want to improve it. But let's give our employees a chance to do that. $7 million that's identified in this is a small, it's a very small opportunity when the reality of that opportunity could be so much greater if our employees are all engaged in helping us get a better province. And you know how they get to be better? They get to be better when we're better. They get to be better when they hear us every day talk about things that really matter to them. And things every day that when you make a decision, you make an announcement, oh, I understand why we're doing that. But when we don't do that, they look at us and say, well, why should I bother? Why should I care? You're going to keep taxing me, so how can I avoid taxes? You're going to keep spending my money out the door, so how do I get my piece? It is a predictable outcome for people not to get engaged if they don't see their leadership leading the way and being part of that. And yes, you know, we talked about, the Premier talked early on about freezing the salaries for MLAs. That's been going on forever, 10 years. You know, the tweak in the issues around the cabinet salaries. But we did a pension reform that was a huge impact on all of us. That's reform. That's reform that people saw all across this province, said, wow. And even to this day, they asked us, did you really do that? Well, we did it. We did it because it was the right and the fair thing to do. And we did it because we needed people to help us get better in this province. So we can pretend here, this government can pretend that it has all the solutions, but a statement for today is consistently proven as an inaccuracy tomorrow, because there's nothing behind it. There isn't anything there other than simply a statement. When we talked about the strategic review, I said, you know, it was just a plan to delay the HST. I watched the foundation crumble. In the cases of the Auditor General, we put in a plan there to allow the Auditor General to have greater access to the government actions. We had a Fiscal Transparency and Accountability Act that caused greater accountability, real accountability, not something with a title that you pass in the legislation and you hope nobody reads it, and for most cases they don't. So the media will put out the Accountability Act put through by the government. The people at home will say, oh, well, that's great. I'm glad to see that they're more accountable. But then you read through it, there's nothing there. There isn't any meat, there's no real action, there's no real follow-up. It's just another exercise in public relations. And isn't it sad when a government will spend more time trying to convince the people of this province the job is being done than actually doing the job? That is so sad, in my view. In my view, when you do the job, the rest follows. You don't have to keep talking about getting the job done, because it's getting done and people notice. But with this government, we'll talk about getting the job done. We'll try to convince you the job's being done. And all the while, people all around us are saying, what are we going to do with New Brunswick? Well, I know firsthand how good New Brunswick can be. I saw it. I know firsthand how good that our people are that are working here. I know firsthand how we can deliver better services in every aspect of what we do. But you can't do it by throwing money at the wall, throwing out all kinds of verbal diarrhea, and expect something to stick. That may sound, maybe there's a soundbite that comes out of that people feel good about, and maybe there isn't. But I think, Mr. Speaker, we are seeing a change in public appetite. We are seeing a change where people are saying it's time for politicians to represent the province, to do what they say, and to say what they do. We have a golden opportunity to be so much better, and I only wish this government would display that. We saw endless times when messaging comes out with half a story. I know in the past we talked about, I remember talking about so many cases where people would say, oh well, in the 4 years you didn't balance the books, or you didn't get the deficit to zero. Mr. Speaker, when I say about managing for a brighter future, I remember that was a title. It wasn't anything that was made up. It was managing for a brighter future. It was taking everything we do in a slow and methodical process, and the trends show that both in the spending growth, in the reduction in the deficit, in the reduction in terms of total number as we went through attrition, in our reduction in historical borrowing, everything that was moving in the direction in order to bring control around how we spent money, and also not have a requirement for no more taxes. And you know, I heard the Premier talk this morning about, well, these taxes went up when we were there. There was a huge hole that was presented when we arrived in government, and the hole was that the income tax levels were low, and had been dropped, and the plan was to put the HST on. That was Sean Graham's plan. Now, with the NB Power thing going sideways, he aborted that plan. When we got in, we had seen, wow, we're missing both. We need one or the other, but not both. We had promised not to put up the HST, so we did the personal income tax. We would have not needed to put on the HST. We had no plans to put on the HST because our platform was a prudent and responsible platform that didn't necessitate more taxes and spending on things we don't need. Where are service levels improving? Have we improved in the area of poverty reduction? Who would know? Has there been any analysis of that? Have we improved in the area of doctors and patients without doctors? I mean, how well do we monitor that? Have we improved in the area of senior care and housing? I mean, we talk about the new facility being built in the Miramichi, and I know firsthand now that facility, apparently, now maybe I can be corrected, but I have been told directly that facility will not be accessible to bid on by any contractor in New Brunswick. So they aren't able to bid on that project. Now that's pretty sad. And I've also understand that facility, or to duplicate what that facility will provide, could be done with a savings of about $60 million. $60 million, Mr. Speaker. Look how far that goes to home care, to providing better quality of life through better salaries for home care employees who want to keep people in their homes, which is what we all want. How many times have we said that? People are not raising their hand to go into the nursing home. They go in by necessity. People want to stay in their own home. And how long can we keep it there? Keep them there. If you look at this facility and you say, okay, in all of the spectrum, how many beds does that add? 40, 50? And we have a demand in the terms of nursing home construction, a demand that would see we need 600, I think the number is about 6,000 over the next 20 years. But then it drops off as the demographic wave moves through. So, Mr. Speaker, what is the solution? The solution is not building more shiny and cutting the ribbon. The solution is finding a way for people to stay in their own home and developing the healthcare network that supports individuals to live where they want to live, in their own home, as long as they possibly can. And it's there to be done, Mr. Speaker, but what does this government want to do? Cut shiny ribbons, make an announcement. Just keep on doing the same old politics, watch our province degrade the same old way, and pretend all is well. I just, sometimes you say, how can that possibly be an adult way to act? Is it even conceivable? And I'm sure I could sit down with any one of you, well, most of you, and we could have a discussion about the reality of this province, and we'd get agreement. But in this setting, it seems the rational behavior can go all out the window. So when you talk about, you know, what's been achieved here over the last while, I guess if you charge enough money, I know that you know, we were hoping to develop the natural gas resource, and how much, you know, the reality that is today. The market has changed, the people have left, the investors, but we believe that it's important to build the economy through private investment, not through more tax dollars charged to people. The East-West pipeline, or West-East pipeline, sorry, and we put a just a few months ago in the fall session, here comes this great thing, another media thing, all party support for now what's called the Trans-Canada or Trans-East-West pipeline, what's it name of it? Energy East. So now it's called Energy East, but we had to bring in a new support for the Energy East pipeline, all parties. 4 years ago we did that. So where are we moving? Around and around and around. Meanwhile, you step out of line with the health accord, so do you think Quebec are too happy to help us move the pipeline through Quebec? Not likely. They're winning any points with us, or we're winning any points with them. So you say, where's been the focus on that? I've offered numerous times, because I came from that world. I know that business. Let's put the full court press on. But is it too late? But instead, we'll throw out these things. Now we're going to build a second nuclear plant. I think that was brought out in the last month or two of Sean Graham's days. In fact, I think it was brought up by the same person that's likely bringing it forward now. And you killed it. And so is there a reality, or is there smoke and mirrors, Mr. Speaker? And there comes the issue. Throw out this stuff, hoping something will stick, and just carry on. I think the day has come, and it's long overdue, where we really do have accountability in the system. And I've said over and over again, it starts right here. We can't continue to ignore the obvious. I've said and wrote an article not long ago about politics being a business unto itself. And I have never seen a stronger illustration of that than right here, that I'm looking across this government. This government has demonstrated, above all else, politics. In their view, politics first, province second. Mr. Speaker, it should be just the opposite. Province first, politics second. I wrote another article not long ago, and it was called The Art of Deception. And you know, I think that it's really been quite amazing to watch, and I've talked a lot about it thus far, and that we have seen over and over again how one piece of news can often mean something very, very differently. And we saw it, as I mentioned, not long ago with the CBC report and the fact check. We saw it on the 3,000 job thing and the CBC report there in relation to, wow, these are double counted, triple counted, these jobs don't exist. And then they don't exist now, they don't exist tomorrow, they might exist 3 years. And then we see, you know, investments in an area that's pretty hard to understand, Sears being one of them. And you say, well, what's the business case for this? But it doesn't matter with this government. It really doesn't matter, because the business case would be the last thing that's on this government's mind. So when I think about where do we go from here, and I watch this government talk about, and in the state of the province, 34% increase in capital investment. Now, it had a little footnote, so if you're sitting close enough to the screen, it said mostly public sector funding. Well, mostly is likely around 33% or 33.5%, or maybe even 34%. But the point is, what do we hope to gain in the long run by continuing to build things we don't need? What do we think is going to happen when we continue to add to a debt now heading for $15 billion and an interest rate that's now solidly over $700 million a year? That is at lowest rates, really have been there. Hopefully they'll stay there, because there's certainly no planning for an interest rate increase. But that doesn't seem to matter. It's like, how does this government, what is their key objective? They're focused, all right, to get elected. To get elected in the next election and just keep spending people's money all over, and the average person will say, oh, well, that's good. We need the HST to get the deficit down. Really? Well, no, we didn't. But with this government, you need more than the HST to get the deficit down. You need that, and you'll need a carbon tax. So what's the news on that? And we saw it in the budget. It talks about new revenue coming. I mean, is it a gift from the federal government, or is it the carbon tax coming soon to a theatre near you? And I guess when you look at the revenue, the idea that this government says, I just need to get more revenue and life will be great. Well, in reality, none of us can do that in our homes. We might all like the concept, but you know, you're not able just to go out and, in the case, you know, working all those years, I wasn't able just to say, look, I'm spending more money than I'm taking in, so just give me more money. That never worked. I had to work within the means that was provided to me. And it wasn't a case of having a target like this government believes that they have in this province. I'll just charge more money to the taxpayers, and they will allow me to spend it, so that, and they'll vote for me because I'm spending their money. I think the jig's up. I think we're finally at a point now that we're going to have a situation that people are going to say enough's enough. In my own personal campaign, where I can, for the leadership, I campaigned on a model of province first, politics second. I campaigned on changing politics. And Mr. Speaker, I'm very proud to stand here today with all my colleagues, because we're all focused on changing politics for the benefit of this province, and it's exciting. We know that we can lead the way, and we know that our party can be the conduit to allow New Brunswickers of all political stripes to say, this time it's for New Brunswick. This time I want to be part of a party that's going to change politics in this province and turn this province in the right direction. I know it can be done. I saw it. I know it's real. I know we have a huge untapped resource in our people. I know that we can protect rural areas. I know we can protect hospitals and schools. We just have to stop blowing money out the door for political reasons. I know our rural routes can once again become tourist destinations because the roads will be fit to drive on. But we got to stop building superhighways that we don't need. We make them safe. We build passing lanes. We got to stop building bridges where we don't need bridges. We have to be prudent about what we do. And that seems to be, and investing in shipyards that don't build ships. Yeah, it's the other thing. Getting skin in the game where we invest with those who also want to invest. And you know what, Mr. Speaker? We had an opportunity when we talk about that shipyard, because we said we will invest with the people that want to make it a success. But you know what? That didn't matter to this government. It didn't matter, because, oh no, we'll buy it. We'll buy it, and it doesn't make a difference if it's a success or not. Do you think people become engaged in solutions if you're just going to hand them money and allow taxpayers to fund it? We need everybody on deck to help us fix this province. And that includes every sector of this province, Mr. Speaker. But unfortunately, that isn't the model of this government. Unfortunately, what they want to do is just throw the tax dollars out there and let the province suffer because of it. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to be standing here today to represent a different view on politics. And if we do not change politics, our province will continue to suffer. Our services will continue to decline. Our rural roads will continue to get worse. Our rural communities will continue to shrink, and our tourists will keep on driving through as fast as they can. And I want to change that, and every one of my colleagues want to change it, and it can be changed, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity to put the province first and politics second. Thank you very much.